All thought the pony turned into worthless. Nobody had given him even a second glance, besides for this one female who noticed what no person else dared to dream. She took him home, and what transpired would depart those who rejected him fully bowled over. The midday sun was pitiless, its glare savagely meditated from the dust-sheathed planks that enclosed the stockyard fences. It changed into full-on auction time, a jovial parade of horses in from ranches scattered everywhere it appeared. Buyers strode with huge-brimmed hats and polished leather-based boots between the pens, eyes eager as they made opinions of every animal. Some jotted in pocket-sized notebooks, others spoke in low tones, gesturing at horses they was hoping to assert. The air vibrated with the hum of communicate, mingled with the stressed whinnies of horses and the clanking of chains. When one of the prize horses entered the exhibition place, the noise ebbed, changed via an electric-powered anxiety as all eyes fixed on the creature. "Look at that coat," one man murmured. "Powerful legs on that one," some other chimed in. Yet, on the quiet nook of the backyard, far away from the hustle and bustle of hobby, one pen stood as forgotten as if it had disappeared into thin air. Inside this pen was a lanky horse, standing as nonetheless as it is able to, hanging its head and with a coat so dull, caked with dust. His ribs had been poking out, his spindly legs slightly seeming to preserve his weight. Most men simply passed without a look, some snickered to themselves. "That one's a lost cause," one said, shaking his head. "Wouldn't even pull a cart. Probably delivered right here out of pity," another said with a median laugh. "Better off sent immediately to the slaughterhouse." The horse didn't flow, sunken eyes unafraid but a quiet resignation, as if it had long because grown used to being overlooked, unseen, and unloved. Through the group, one younger girl solid her way to the front with sure willpower. Grace, her chestnut hair tied in a practical braid, wore a simple white blouse smudged with dust, faded jeans, and scuffed using boots that had visible higher days. Slung over her shoulder became a small leather-based pouch maintaining her savings, hard-earned from long hours on her own family's ranch. Sharp, clear eyes scanned the horses on show, lingering at the most magnificent ones, yet none held her interest for long. Her grandfather's phrases nonetheless echoed in her mind, "Never choose a horse by using its look. Look deeper, past what the eyes can see." As she walked in the direction of the forgotten corner, her tempo began to sluggish. Her eyes settled at the neglected horse, and something in its stillness, its quiet recognition of being left out, panged something deep within her. She neared the pen, ignoring the snickers of onlookers close by. "What are you doing right here, boy?" she murmured low, laying her arms at the tough-sawn wooden fence. The horse barely lifted its head, just sufficient for his or her eyes to fulfill. And in that second, something bizarre clutched in Grace's chest. What she noticed in those eyes wasn't simply unhappiness, however deeper, a resignation coupled with a faint, buried desire to be observed. "What's so thrilling in that bag of bones?" A voice, older in years, said ironically as he stepped nearer. "That is none of your problem," Grace replied resolutely, her eyes in no way leaving the horse. Cautiously she held out a hand. The horse was irritating for an instantaneous, however relaxed, knowing she meant no damage, after which leaned in so its nostril brushed against her fingertips. A temporary touch at pleasant, but it sufficed for Grace to form a resolution in her mind. When the horse became introduced, the auctioneer's voice changed into not as active because it became with the opposite horses. He nearly sounded apologetic. "Well, parents, we've were given a young horse right here that needs some TLC. Perhaps someone can discover a use for him." Silence fell across the crowd. Not one hand turned into raised. The backyard quietly chuckled as heads turned away in dismissal of even the idea of a bid. "I'll take him," Grace said, and her voice cut via the stillness. The declaration dropped into the silence like a thunderclap. It pulled startled stares and incredulous laughter. "You've got to be kidding," a man scoffed. "What are you going to do with that animal?" "He's nothing, however problem." Grace overlooked the whispers and mocking glances as she walked directly towards the auctioneer. "What's the charge?" she requested without flinching. The guy gazed at her with astonishment, the sight of somebody who desired the horse past notion. "Not plenty," he spoke back, shrugging. "Pay the minimal and it's miles yours." Grace promptly exceeded him the bills. Without hesitation, the fingers held progressively in opposition to the tide of laughter and murmurs remaining in. "Sold," said the auctioneer with undisguised relief and banged down his gavel on the counter, sealing the deal. She took the horse's lead rope in her hand and, turning to him, spoke in a tender tone, "From now on, I'll name you Blaze." She permitted her hand caress alongside the pony's muzzle. "No greater worry, boy. No one's going to reject you again." As they walked away from the chaotic public sale, the voices of the skeptics trailed after her. That lady has no concept what she's doing. She's going to regret it. Grace did no longer look lower back. The blend of uncertainty and determination swirled inside Grace as she walked subsequent to Blaze. She failed to recognize what lay beforehand, but one factor became for positive. She had visible something on this horse that others had not, and she wasn't about to surrender. Grace approached the project with the identical deliberateness as had guided their adventure to this point. She allowed Blaze to sniff and inspect the saddle first, getting used to it, before she cautiously set it on his lower back without securing it in region. Blaze tensed up, twisting his head to look the extraordinary weight that had been put on his body. Grace soothed him with gentle phrases as her hand ran along his flank till he relaxed once more. It became a sluggish, deliberate method, but each small step reinforced their bond. When the saddle turned into eventually well cinched on, Henry stepped into the corral. "All proper, girl, let's examine how he handles it whilst you're up there." Grace nodded, however failed to get on just yet. She walked along Blaze, guiding him around the corral. The horse stumbled a few times, his movements now not as sleek and unsure, however quickly he started out to get accustomed to this strange weight on his lower back. At ultimate, Grace squared her shoulders and veered onto the horse's flank. "Okay boy, let's have a look at this." Very lightly, she positioned her foot inside the stirrup and hoisted herself up into the saddle. Blaze iced up instantly. His muscle tissues stiffened as though he wasn't pretty sure what to do. Grace sat quietly, no longer moving to present him time to get used to her on his lower back. "That's it boy. You're doing high quality," she stated softly, leaning forward to stroke his neck. Blaze let loose an extended sigh and slowly he started out to move. His steps were tentative at the beginning, however with each lap around the corral, his confidence grew. Grace felt a surge of pride and remedy as she noticed the horse not handiest tolerated her presence however was starting to transport naturally below her weight. Henry stood beside the fence and watched with an openly pleased expression. "See? I instructed you he wasn't damaged. He just wished a person to remind him what he is able to." The day had become a breaking factor for the pony and the rider. Since Blaze had allowed the saddle, the following massive undertaking was preparing for competitions. Grace knew leaping indicates and dressage required an awful lot subject and preciseness, however most of all, an inseparable bond between the rider and horse. Weeks later, it became time to take him off the ranch and divulge him to different environment. Grace concept that turned into an awesome vicinity to get him familiar with diverse terrains and extraordinary noises. The first trip became chaotic. The rustling wind through bushes and the cracking of branches disturbed him. At one time he bolted and nearly threw her off. "It's okay," Grace said firmly, keeping the reins regular but without pulling. "I've got you." Despite the setbacks they endured. Day via day Blaze grew more assured, gaining knowledge of to believe not best Grace but also his own instincts. Their connection deepened, becoming unmistakable to everybody who noticed them collectively. From a distance, Henry frequently watched with a smile tugging at his lips. "That horse does not simply have power," he said at some point to a touring friend. "He's were given heart. And that is all because of Grace." It was one afternoon when they did some fundamental jumps over a small path Grace had installation. At first he changed into awkward and the rails went flying more regularly than now not. But with patience and repetition he began to time it. And the first time he cleared a jump smooth, Grace let out a jubilant cheer, flinging her fingers around his neck. "You did it boy. I knew you could." She sat at the porch within the night, gazing at the stars and couldn't help but dream of the destiny. Still manner from important competitions for the first actual time due to the fact buying Blaze, she felt he turned into ready to stand the sector. Their journey wasn't easy, however they proved one issue. The beyond did not have to tell their destiny, and with sufficient dedication and faith, something became surmountable. Months of tireless education and Grace and Blaze overcame every project that came their way. From the basics to now, Blaze leaped over much better limitations, executing his movements with precision that simplest testified to the unique bond between them. Yet the real challenge turned into but to be faced, entering into the aggressive global. The following morning, when she became poring over the timetable of equestrian activities in the vicinity, Henry seemed earlier than her protecting a mug of coffee. "Well, have you made a decision yet?" Grace exhaled and placed the calendar down on the desk. "There's a competition on the town subsequent month," she admitted, "but I do not know whether we are equipped. There is still a lot to paintings on." Henry gave her a steady look. "Listen, child. Nobody starts out best. If you maintain on looking forward to the ideal moment, it's going to in no way show up. Blaze is ready and so are you. The handiest aspect left is a good way to consider it. Bolstered by means of her grandfather's phrases, Grace signed up for the local occasion. It changed into a small competition meant for beginners, but nonetheless, it became a sizable step forward. The thought of competing in the front of a crowd of spectators and seasoned riders sent a wave of nerves through Grace. It changed into opposition day earlier than she knew it. Grace cautiously readied Blaze, brushing his coat till it shone like polished obsidian inside the heat daylight. She saddled him up with precision, getting the whole thing in order. That "Ready, boy?" she asked softly, locking eyes with him. Blaze answered with a gentle nicker, almost as if he knew how extreme this was. When they reached the area, the electricity of the bustling crowd and the regular movement of horses and riders unsettled Blaze. He shifted restlessly, tossing his head and snorting at each new sight or sound. Grace stayed composed, guiding him with steady palms and a calming voice. "Easy now," she murmured, stroking his neck. "We're on this collectively." As her turn neared, Grace couldn't assist but observe the glances forged her way, some curious, others skeptical. Many inside the crowd remembered the scrawny, awkward horse from the public sale, though he changed into almost unrecognizable now. "Isn't that the horse no one wanted to bid on?" a person muttered near the rail. "Yeah, however it seems like they have cleaned him up," every other answered, snickering. "Not that it will make a great deal of a difference." Grace returned any sharp retort and as an alternative placed her confidence in Blaze. He became so much more than they realized. Finally, her call turned into known as, and the rush of adrenaline was rampant in her veins. She swung conveniently onto Blaze, urging him into the area. The course turned into direct but required precision and belief. She took a moment to have a settling breath, adjusted the reins and gave Blaze the signal. First, he started out to trot measuredly, which transformed into a gallop in fluid motion. He cleared the first obstacle, the low bar, easily. The next one changed into a tall jump. For a cut-up second, Blaze held returned, and then surged beforehand, clearing that with a bound that left the gang hushed in marvel. Every leap and flip changed into a testament to their tough work. Though no longer perfect, their synchronicity became undeniable. For Grace, it wasn't about triumphing, it changed into approximately proving what they had done collectively. As they crossed the end line, thunderous applause erupted. Not anybody understood exactly what they completed, they knew just how hard one needed to work. Grace leaned down inside the saddle and threw her palms round Blaze. Relief, pride, and gratitude swelled high in her chest. Later that nighttime as they pulled lower back onto the ranch, Henry stood at the porch ready, his face etched in a mixture of satisfaction and tenderness. "I knew you may do it," he stated. "But this is simply the beginning." Grace smiled, looking over at Blaze. "I understand, Grandpa. But I'm ready for some things next." And so is Blaze. The avenue up beforehand was an awful lot clearer now than it had ever been, promising new desires and demanding situations beyond their first competition. Grace took a step between Chambers and Blaze, nearly as though she had been protective her partner from the words. "I do not agree with you. Apprehend simply what this horse method to me, Mr. Chambers," she said, even-voiced but complete of conviction. "He's a chum, companion. Everything that we have managed to we have achieved together. No charge in cash for that." For a second, Chambers studied her, his face inscrutable. Then he shrugged, a slightly audible color of condescension in his tone. "It's a pity," he said. "But allow me make one issue clear. In this international, emotions don't take you far. Greatness comes at a fee, and at some point you will need to determine in case you're willing to pay it." With that, he grew to become and Strode returned closer to his automobile. Grace watched him pressure away, her chest burning with anger and backbone. She acknowledged the come across to Henry later that nighttime as she mucked out the stables. He listened quietly, leaning at the shovel he had been the use of to help her. "Men like that always show up when they see something that shines," he stated sooner or later, his tone quiet and firm. "But the real question, Grace, is why you're in this path. If it is glory you're after, they may sway you in the future. But if it is something more, then no offer will ever make you waver." Grace taken into consideration his words, her gaze drifting to Blaze, resting quietly in his stall. Her face softened as memories surfaced, reminiscences of instances while the sector had become its back on him. Together, that they had defied the odds, and no price ought to ever equate to what they had constructed. "I'm no longer on this for the trophies," Grace in the end stated, her voice degree. "I'm right here because I want to show that braveness is not approximately what others suppose. And due to the fact Blaze merits to shine, Now not for them, however for himself. Henry nodded, a proud smile gambling upon his face. Then hold going, woman. But bear in mind, the higher you climb, the tougher they'll attempt to deliver you down. Grace knew he changed into proper the extra terrific the reputation, the bigger the project. Yet she didn't bat an eyelid. She changed into prepared to fight along with her life for all that they had accomplished, regardless of what fee might need to be paid. The training became tough, aggressive truly. Preparation for the coming near national show jumping championship wasn't just a competition but changed into about preventing in opposition to the cream of riders in the US of A and towards the residual prejudice and skepticism. The day of the national show jumping championship dawned crisp and electric-powered, with thick anticipation striking inside the air. To Grace, this became now not simply any competition but a degree to show that she and Blaze belonged most of the elite. The venue itself turned into a grand sight. Imposing grandstands completely filled with human beings, the murmur of voices, and occasionally the neighing of a horse within the warm-up ring. Confident, sparkling horses and skilled riders exuded confidence in their coaching. "Ready for this, lady?" Henry requested, organization on Grace's shoulder as they watched the direction from across the way. Grace took a deep breath, grew to become to Blaze. Amid all the uproar he just stood calm, alert, nearly knowing the gravity of the moment. "We're ready, Grandpa. No depend what takes place, we'll face it together," Grace replied, her voice complete of quiet willpower. The competition had divided into an preliminary path, medium-height jumps accompanied with the aid of a 2D, a ways greater technical spherical. Only the nice might develop, and Grace knew perfection changed into going to have to be the handiest option. When her wide variety became known as out, there was a tender ripple of whispers that ran all through the crowd. Some people knew who Grace became and who Blaze turned into, but the relaxation remained dubious. A horse thrown away at auction in reality would not stand next to one specially bred for this game. Grace mounted effectively, settled the reins and turned Blaze toward the area. The crowd hushed as they took their places on the starting line. "Let's do this, boy, it's our second," she whispered, her hand touching Blaze's neck in encouragement. The whistle blew, and Blaze surged forward in a fluid gallop. First was a tall triple jump. With ease, Blaze soared over it to sparse applause from the stands. Obstacle after obstacle fell because the pair mixed their skill and resolution in ideal concord. Every turn, each jump, referred to months of relentless education and an unshakable bond between them. The crowd erupted into cheers when they crossed the end line flawless. Number 47, Grace Martinez and her horse Blaze qualify for the second one spherical with a very awesome time, the announcer announced. Grace allowed her breath out with a smile as she leaned forward to pat Blaze. "We did it, boy. We certainly did it." She should experience the burden of blended gazes from her competition within the resting location, a few complete of admiration and others full of doubt. A few came forward to provide congratulations at the same time as others kept their distance, their faces mask of skepticism. Among the ones coming ahead was a younger rider named Jake, whom she had met at a local opposition. "I knew you had something special, but that was wonderful," he said, his smile real. "Thanks, Jake. It's Blaze who deserves the credit score," she stated modestly, scratching at the back of the pony's ears. The 2D round turned into going to be a long way greater challenging. Tight turns, intricate mixtures, enforcing limitations. Others took their turns, all appearing with great talent and precision. By the time my number became known as, each pair of eyes in that location, judges, spectators, competitors regarded riveted on me. This time the strain turned into palpable. She used her strength on what became maximum essential, her reference to Blaze. The second path became to be an enormous take a look at in their skills. At the 0.33 obstacle A complex zigzag pattern, Blaze hesitated for a moment. But with Grace's corporation constant lead, he regained his rhythm and cleared it flawlessly. Grace felt her heart racing as they neared the very last mission, a towering double bounce designed to intimidate even the maximum seasoned riders. Blaze galloped ahead with unrelenting ambition, and in a single potent soar, they sailed over the bars on the alternative facet without grazing a single one. The crowd erupted in applause. Grace leaned down and whispered into Blaze's ear, thanking him as the announcer called out their time, the second fastest inside the complete opposition. At the award ceremony, Grace and Blaze proudly stood on the podium to receive their silver medal. It wasn't gold, however. To Grace, the fulfillment intended a lot greater.